Okay, welcome to the broadcast. This is Chuck Morse. I'm getting some echoey sound here, so you'll have to bear with me. This is not some kind of a Jewish conspiracy or anything like that. Let's see, is that better? Maybe I just have to remove any sound in the room, in which case I can only hope that I get headphone sound. Look, I'm doing kind of a solo experiment here today. I mean, my ultimate goal with this program is to be able to do it live and accept calls and texts and even webcam contributions from viewers and listeners. Let's see if I can hook up the headphones. Maybe that'll help matters. But when it comes to technical matters, I'm all thumbs, as the old saying goes. I don't do well with it, so please bear with me on that. This is some kind of Jewish conspiracy. Now, the reason I'm saying that is because of all of the, I guess you might say, there we go. The commentary, yeah, I'm getting like echo in the ears now. The commentary that resulted from the Richard Spencer interview, which I conducted last week, and which have appeared on the YouTube station. Many of these comments are truly and personal, and they talk about my personal appearance and my, various, in a most vulgar way. And they call me various names that are personally deeply offensive, especially with regard to my religion, which is Judaism, and are hurtful. And I feel that I must get on and talk about this because I'm concerned about the condition of anti-Semitism in the world today. It's uglier and more hateful and more dangerous and more vicious, I think, than any time that I can remember. And I've been tracking this pretty much all my adult life. I mean, I started becoming aware of it as a kid when my brother and I read The Rise and Fall of the Third Reich by William Schreier. We made a full study one summer about Hitler in World War II. And that really got me to thinking about what is it that caused that kind of hatred and caused that event in history, which is unprecedented. It's not that there aren't other Holocausts and other genocides. There are. In some cases, they're worse in terms of the sheer numbers of people killed. But where the Nazi Holocaust is unprecedented is in that it was so completely and utterly focused on one group of people, namely the Jewish people, and a deliberate, concerted, and very sophisticated agenda to annihilate those people completely from the face of the earth. And that makes it different, in my opinion, than other genocides. And so thus I see the world today, and I see the rise of Jew hatred, of anti-Semitism, on the left and on the right, as those terms are defined. On the right, by conventional definition, they have to do with the reactions by people to my interview with Richard Spencer, who, I don't know if he's an anti-Semite, but he certainly seems to have embraced certain anti-Semitic conspiracy theories about Jews racially, that we are, that by nature, I guess if you are looking at life from a racist standpoint, you tend to think of people collectively as if they all have certain traits that make them the way they are based upon their collective group. And this, I don't think I'm going too far off the beaten track by suggesting that racists view this biologically. I mean, they view people as different from other people based on their race. And that is, I think provably false. And it's collective. It's communist, actually. I mean, it's what Ayn Rand accurately referred to as a barnyard version of socialism. The idea that we can be judged collectively at all is really wrong, because we're not a collective. There's no such thing as a collective. We're individuals to be judged by our own merits or our own default, our own problems, not by some kind of an imposed collectivist agenda. Those things are not relevant to who we are as people. In fact, what I'm expressing right here is what I would suggest is not only natural to the human being, but it's also the American way. And I said this to Richard Spencer, that America is the best manifestation of that which is best in nature. And that is that the individual is who they are. They create their own lives. They determine their own destiny to the degree that anyone's able under God and with limitations. This runs against the concept of collectivism. America runs against collectivism. And what you have, not the beehive. Thank you very much, Karen. The hive is the ultimate manifestation of collectivism, a one world beehive, a one world ant colony, where everyone is de facto equal. That's the ultimate dream. Now, for the racists, I think the ultimate dream is not that. They want to see, I guess, the white race, which they view as superior. I know that they deny that, and Richard Spencer denies it, but I contend it, as having the upper hand in the world and of becoming pure. And however they define white, by the way, that's another subject, but I'll get in that in a minute. But they view this, they having their own sovereign world and their own empire, kind of like a caliphate, if you will, with other races having their little empires that are somewhat subordinate to the white empire. It's an evil idea. It's just as evil as communism. And even if they do believe that these empires based on race are equal, it's still evil, because people can't be judged based on race. What is it to be white, or what is it to be black? And who decides what that means? I mean, really, these are irrelevant concepts. They have nothing to do with who you are. Now, some of these emails that were sent to me, they say, well, what about, and Richard Spencer said this, by the way, that Western civilization, which emanated out of Europe, is superior to other civilizations. And because Europe is quote unquote white, therefore, white people are superior to other peoples. This is the Latin term for this is post hoc ergo propter hoc. In other words, because of this, therefore it is. And my answer to that is that it's half right. The part that's right is that European civilization did become superior to other civilizations, and that the ultimate manifestation of that European Western civilization was the United States, and it remains so. But it has nothing to do with whether or not Europeans were white. It's not relevant. It has everything to do with the fact that Europeans, for various very interesting historical reasons, accepted and embraced certain ideas that made them free and that helped them develop sovereignty. And I would contend that those ideas emanated from the Bible, the Jewish Bible, that's right. The idea, first of all, that is described in the book of Genesis, that we are created in the image of God. We are not God. We are images of God. And as such, we're imperfect, but at the same time, we have rights. Because we're an image of the divine, we have the right to have our persons function respectfully. I mean, we have to, and therefore we have to respect other people's rights because they also are created in the image of God, and that we are all equal in the de facto sense, not in the literal sense. I should say in the du jour sense. I mean, under God, under the law, we're not equal in terms of accomplishment and results and how we live our lives. We're all very different, but under God, as creators, as created images of God, we are equal. That is a Judaic concept. It comes from the Torah or the Bible, which Christianity embraced entirely. And that Christianity, under the ministry of Jesus and his followers, basically was a form of Judaism that was brought to the world. And thus the world embraced the concept of one God and the concept that rights emanate from that God, and that God is the creator of the universe and the lawgiver. This is what makes Western civilization great. This was the building block upon which those of us who come from Europe and eventually created the United States were free to be able to create our own lives and to invent and to imagine and to develop. Okay, we've got, hey, Chuck, great to see you. Long time since you interviewed me on your program about my novels. Okay, maybe I'll have you back. Brill Temple, that is. Not the Hive. Okay, I'm getting a few comments here. And you're certainly welcome to join the program, by the way, if you'd like to. If you're watching live on YouTube. Let me just get rid of that. That's kind of, yeah, there we go. Let me just hide these because they're not, yeah, they don't look great on the screen. Anyway, so what I'm getting at here is that there were ideas that were embraced by the Europeans that made Europe a great civilization, not because they were biologically white. That's not relevant. Those ideas were more than just the Judaic ideas emanating from the Torah. It also was Greco-Roman law, the Greek philosophers, especially Aristotle and his development of the concept of the golden mean. The Romans and their development of law and administrative, government. The Anglo-Saxons developed the concept of limited government. When they developed, they would put governments in various silos, whether it be the sheriff, the cleric, the king, the property owner. I mean, they had all of these amazing, things going on that developed limited government, and that concept, of course, was embraced and embodied by the founding fathers of the United States. But it did nothing to do with whether or not these people were white or not. I mean, this is the missing piece with Richard Spencer and his racist crowd. Whiteness is irrelevant. And the proof is that, and I've had people say, well, don't you think white people are superior? I mean, take a look at, Africa, or take a look at Asia. No, it's obviously false. You have to get out, if you think that, you need to get out of the house and you need to go out into the world a little bit and see people and talk to people and get to know people of different backgrounds. You will quickly realize that this idea that you're promoting in your own heads, this theory is obviously false. That Black people, Asians, other minorities, that they're just like you, that they have the same skill set, they've got the same ambition, they've got the same value to their own lives, they've got the same emotions, just like you do. There's no difference at all. I mean, I feel it's crazy for me to even have to say this, But yet these people seem to embrace this theory. And what I would tell you, and let me just put it this way. If you're going to embrace that theory, before you do so, because it is a hateful theory, and it's an arrogant theory, you should operate like any other scientist. Go out and do some field work. Go into a minority neighborhood. Go to a minority restaurant. Go to a minority business. Go to a minority church. Do some field work. Get out of the house and get to meet people before you make such a ridiculous and really damaging judgment about other people. You know, I mean, maybe I'm asking too much for that, but the fact of the matter is that you're ignorant. And I mean that in the sense that you don't have knowledge. But then, of course, some of the malicious aspects of these attacks that I've had to endure since I did this interview tell me that it's maybe a little bit more than ignorance. Maybe you do know what you're talking about, and you just hate black people. You hate minorities. Now, as far as the Jewish conspiracy stuff goes, you know, and it's so nasty. People calling me a kike and saying that I'm fat and this sort of thing. Fine. Why be so ugly? Why be so mean? How'd you like it if I talked about what you look like? You know, I mean, putting aside all that, they've embraced this kind of Jewish worldview conspiracy that the Jews secretly control the world. And it's a conspiracy that's been used by others historically, I think often to cover up the fact that they're trying to control the world. I think that was true with Hitler. I think that was true with Stalin. I think it's true today among certain radical Islamic sects that the Jew is secretly trying to control them. The Jew is responsible for their unhappiness in their own lives. And the way for them to become happy is to destroy the Jew, to kill the Jew. I suppose if this were true, then you would have reason to want to fight the Jew and put them back on their heels. Karl Marx wrote a manifesto about this called On the Jewish Question, later renamed and republished as A World Without Jews, that was absolutely into this theory, but put it into some very sophisticated political language. And I think Marx probably reflected some of the views at the time. It was in the 1840s in Germany, but he furthered it. He gave it a certain imprimatur, a certain legitimacy because of his position in the establishment. And that those views were that basically the Jew was responsible for negative traits in the human being. He referred to it as self-interest, huckstering, and money. The Jew invented these things. Now, this goes to the Marxist theory of false consciousness, which is that in the Marxist world, which derives from the philosophy of Immanuel Kant, by the way, there is no such thing as anything real. There's no reality. Everything is manufactured by people who are trying to exploit you. That the exploiters invent things like religion, which Marx called the opiate of the masses. They invent money. They invent trade. They invent family. They invent love. They invent loyalty. They invent all these things that create imbalance, according to them, that create inequality, according to them, and that are created as part of a grand conspiracy to control people and exploit people. This is their theory of exploitation regarding labor, that the big companies at the time had invented a means to exploit labor and get rich off labor by somehow inventing these institutions so that people would be lulled to sleep and they'd be willing to give up and do labor. And of course, it puts aside the reality, which is that the people who created these businesses employed people, and that, at the same time, people had a right to unionize to represent their interests and develop a relationship of balance between union and management. That's the right way to go. I mean, that's why in this country we have the right to assemble so that we can represent our interests. We have a right to redress of our grievances with the government, and we have a right to create unions. I'm all for unions. I'm a union man. I've been in unions. But Marx viewed the capital, the holders of capital, as having created a false reality so they could exploit people. He viewed money as a false creation, that had to be eventually abolished because it creates inequality. The discussion of what money is a very interesting discussion, a little beyond what I want to get into in this short presentation today. But suffice it to say that money is nothing more than an abstract expression of property and value. In fact, Marx and his crowd believed property was artificial, that the ultimate dream was to live in a collective state where things like property would be abolished and then everybody would live in harmony with nature and would produce according to their ability so that they could give money and give property, if you will, to others who don't have as much, that we would all have just what we need, nothing more, nothing less. This is the utopian view. And it's transferred by Marx to the Jews as being the creators of these false consciousness. The Jews were the ones who created all these institutions that stood in the way of Marx's dream of a one world ant colony. The Jews invented self-interest because they care about themselves, right? The Jews invented trading between goods and services. Marx called it huckstering, the ability to take whatever it is that you have or that you've created and trade with others for other values. It's natural to the human being. Animals understand this. And then, of course, money is the abstract means of engaging in trade so that we don't have to have everything bartered. Marx believed that these were institutions that were created by and invented by the Jews so they could exploit other people and they could exploit the world. Well, first of all, obviously, these things were not invented by anybody. They exist in nature. They're natural to the human being. Self-interest is what gets us up in the morning. We put ourselves first. We put our family, our friends, our colleagues second, and we put our community and maybe our nation and the world third. That's natural. That's part of the human condition. That's who we are. That's baked into us. Free trade is natural. Money is a natural means of exchange. I mean, so we can make trades without having to barter. If we didn't have money, we'd invent money. The most primitive societies had money. They used seashells, or they used, tally sticks in medieval England, where you put a little notch on a stick to determine the value of the transaction. Every society has used money. You need to have an abstract means of exchanging goods and services. It's not invented by Jews. But furthermore, I would suggest that these institutions have been embraced by the Jews, more so maybe than other people. I think there's a lot of interesting reasons for that. It has to do with the fact that the Torah advocates and teaches us to be independent thinkers, that we're individuals created by God. We're images of God, as I started out with. We're not collective. And as such, we are responsible to take care of ourselves, our families, and then to do good for others, what they call in Hebrew, tikkun olam. That's what we are commanded to do by God. And not every Jew does it, of course. You get some lousy Jews who don't do anything. But the point is the religion, the idea, the philosophy advocates it, teaches it, educates its citizens, educates its children to grow up and become independent, sovereign citizens under God that are commanded to do good to the community, to do good for others, and to believe in God and not the state. And of course, then it gets into various means of worshiping God, and that God has a special covenant with the Jewish people. You know, they call it the chosen people, which has to do with serving God, not controlling anybody, one of the great anti-Semitic misconceptions. But the fact of the matter is that these are values that are advocated by Jews. And this was why Marx, who had his parents were Jewish. I mean, he converted to Christianity as a child by his parents. And by the way, he was a devout Christian. When he went into college, he came out of college as a communist, like a lot of people. This was why Marx, as a communist, felt that the Jewish religion had to be eradicated because it had this influence on the world that would result in self-interest and the right to trade goods and services and to have property and to be a functioning, thinking, independent, sovereign citizen under God. This was why he wanted to get rid of Judaism. And yet it's these values that are the bedrock of freedom. This idea of lifting yourself up by the bootstraps and making something out of your own life, by this idea of having some control over your own destiny. These are ideas that were advocated by Judaism. They weren't invented by Judaism. I'd have no problem if they were. They're great ideas, but they're not. They're just part of nature. But Judaism teaches these things. It advocates these things. It suggests these things to the rest of the world. And it is these ideas that also are the bedrock of Christianity as an extension of Judaism. Let's not forget, Christianity, as part of the faith, has embraced what you call the Old Testament, what Jews call the Torah. And then it's the ministry of Jesus is a continuation of these ideas and an introduction of these ideas and morals to all of mankind, which is why Marx felt that by getting rid of Judaism, he could destroy the root of these ideas, and then the branches grafted into that root, like Christianity, would fall into the ground dead because of it. He also felt that it was the best way to destroy the United States, which is the ultimate manifestation of these ideas, codified in our Constitution, codified in our way of life, that the individual is created by God, not by the state, that the individual has certain inalienable rights. The government doesn't create rights. It just recognizes already existing rights. There were no rights created by the Constitution. The Constitution simply recognizes that which is, as Jefferson said, self-evident. And so you have ideas that run completely contrary to the Marxist agenda, which is to create a collectivized world, of lobotomized people who no longer have an independent mind because that creates inequality, who no longer have property, no longer have trade rights, no longer have family, no longer have love, no longer have attachments or anything else that was invented by the bourgeois Jews and bourgeois others. And they move toward collectivism. Well, look, I mean, the people that are responding to Richard Spencer, my interview with Richard Spencer, and to a certain degree, Richard Spencer himself, they also embrace these very same ideas. In fact, I just saw something. I looked up Richard Spencer on Google, and it said that he considers himself to be the Marx of the right. He is like the Marx of the right. They're pushing collectivism. It's no different. The only difference is instead of collectivism based on all humanity and complete equality, it's collectivism based on race, which is in the real sense a manufactured concept. There's no such thing as race. We have our ancestries come from different parts of the world, and we've taken on different characteristics based upon shared experience and genetics. And so we tend to look like the people that we cohabited with for generations. And that means we might have a slightly different skin tone or whatnot. But it doesn't mean anything. I mean, the Romans didn't consider race to be an issue. They didn't recognize race. Some of the Roman emperors were black. They were from Africa, like the Severan line, Septimus Severus, and his line of emperors. They were black. Nobody thought about it in Rome. It's a modern concept, and it would be an interesting history to study. But there's nothing, it has more to do with a cultural predominance in a society. When you have people of a certain tribal background, I guess you might say, that become the dominant political power in a country, they tend to want to perpetrate that power and denigrate those who are not part of that power. And that usually and often historically can be based upon race. But it has nothing to do with, and it's not a good thing. I mean, it's not what America is supposed to be about. We're supposed to be about a nation of small landowners and shop owners who trade with each other and who embrace certain ideas, not based on race, but based on culture, based on philosophy. But if you want to take a look at like white versus non-white, there's nothing to do. I'll give you an example of, in Japan, the predominant, quote, race is Japanese. And in the very northern part of Japan, on the Hokkaido Island, there are the Ainu people. They're white, they're Caucasian, and they've been persecuted for many, many centuries by the dominant Japanese who are not white. So, and they're primitive. I mean, their culture is not as advanced as the Japanese culture. So I only bring that up to point out that whiteness, blackness, Asian, whatever, that these things are irrelevant. It has to do with culture. So that's what I have to say about this today. To those of you who are sending me these nasty notes, I say F you, right? That's what I say. Here we go. I'm not going to sit around and be diplomatic and go, oh, let's coddle people. You know better. You're full of it. Cut the crap. Get with what's real. Let's honor America. Let's not move toward judging people based upon accidents of birth. Let's judge people based upon who they are. And I would probably agree with most of the Richard Spencer followers when it comes to mass immigration. I'm not for it. And I do think there are certain problems associated with the mass immigration of people who have embraced certain religions and cultures that are not compatible to the American way of life. I do believe that. I think people can be acculturated, and I think people have been acculturated, but there are dangers associated with a mass migration of peoples coming in from a country that does not resonate with American values. It's not based on race, though. It's based on culture. It's based on ideas. It's based on who they are in terms of what they've embraced, not who they are in terms of how they were born. So those are my thoughts today on this topic. If you want to check out my books, I'm not here to try to shamelessly plug my books, but they are available, however, on Amazon. I've actually written 3 books on the topic of Judaism, one of which I get into some of these things. It's called The War Against Judaism. You can check them out on Amazon, and also please subscribe to the YouTube channel. I'm trying to build a YouTube channel, and the more I can build a YouTube channel, the more interesting people I'll get on the show. So anyway, once again, thanks for watching, everybody, and have a nice day.